Washington County Head Start program, which I'm part of as well, doing fatherhood work. Andre is part of our team to work with fathers, and we've been a team for 6 years now. So we've got a lot of good successes and stories, and I think a lot of it is because of Andre and how he interacts and really engages the dads when they come. I know they go up to Andre afterwards and they're like, "Can we do this every week? Can you come every week?" And we only meet once a month. And I would say if you were to read Andre's bio, I think some of the words that you would pick out about him is a change agent. Andre takes things that are really complicated and not always easy to talk about, and he makes it real. And I think that's what the dads like about working with Andre. He makes it real. Even though some of the things that they're dealing with are hard. And I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to do for us today as well. And so I'm just really excited to have Andre here today because he's my BFF. So enjoy, and Andre, we're so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Okay.
Glad to be here. Thank
Enjoy,
you.
everyone.
So I don't believe I need a microphone. Is that a good? Okay, good. I want to say I'm humbled by being here because the only reason I think I'm in front of the room is that I've been able to kind of ask questions that make people think. And so that's all I plan to do today is to ask questions that encourage you to think about what you think you know, the illusion of knowledge that we oftentimes have. And so we'll be working through our handbook. I'll be showing some videos. I'll have us do some kind of interactive pieces. But if you're looking for this to change someone else or tools to change someone else, this might not be the workshop for you. This actually is a workshop for you to change you, to figure out things about yourself. So in that spirit, we'll engage. I'll also let you know that I am my father's son, and my father was a Pentecostal, apostolic, evangelical pastor, and he was waiting for the opportunity to go to heaven where time does not matter, where everything is eternal. And so I will do my best to make sure that we stay on task so that this presentation does not become eternal. And so you also might recognize my cadence. You might recognize the fact that I may be preaching to you, and that many of you may say, these are things that I already recognize. And as my father would say, I would submit to you that the choir needs preaching too. And that we, for those of you who some of this information is familiar, please take this as an opportunity to stretch your muscles and to share with your brothers and sisters in sharing this knowledge. And so we'll start with that. And so when I think about what it takes for me to be a father, so I have a 2-year-old daughter. My wife and I have been married for 6 years. We have this beautiful triracial child. My wife is biracial. She's Native American and she's white. My daughter is triracial. We call her a Blendian. Now that is our joke. You cannot use that joke. That is our joke about our child because she's a blend of African American, Native American, and European American. And so, as a father, trying to raise this young person, one of the most difficult questions that I had to encounter as a parent, raising this multicultural child, was what race should she be? And so we're in the hospital, and the nurse comes in with her checklist, and she's like, what race should we declare this child? And I said, Cuban. The nurse was really kind of shocked by that, right? She said, Cuban? I said, yeah, Cuban. She said, is the mom Cuban? I said, no. She said, are you Cuban? I said, no. She said, then why Cuban? I said, who's checking? Is anyone going to check to see if my child is Cuban? Is there a blood quantum for being Cuban? Is there? No. So this is an artificial construct that that we had to decide how we wanted to fit into this artificial construct. And so when I left the room, they sent me out to get coffee. And apparently when I got the coffee, there was a decision made that was outside of my control. So she's not Cuban. But as we think about being a parent, as we think about what that means, it's important to recognize that these are some of the false choices that we have to make as parents, and specifically as fathers. There are oftentimes false choices that we have to make, and so to that end, I want to get right into the presentation. Now, there's a piece of film that I'd like to show you, and it comes out of a speech by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and he makes some very important statements in this presentation, and I want you to think about some of the high points. What are some of the themes that Dr. King is trying to relate in this presentation, and how that might echo through this concept of fatherhood, or the importance of being a father. So I'm going to play this clip. It's about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, and then I want to have some conversations about this particular clip. So here we go. Oh, by the way, it is auto-tuned. And is anyone familiar with auto-tune? All right, cool. Yep, you guys are obviously T-Pain lovers. I see it over there. He's like, yay! Right. So auto-tune is a computer-animated voice. And so they've animated this voice, but there will be subtitles underneath, just in case you haven't adjusted to the voice. It won't take long for you to adjust to the voice. But I want you to be mindful of some of the themes that Dr. King is presenting in this presentation. So here we go.
Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on in these powerful days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter if you know, because I've been to mountain top. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we must get to the promised land. I'm not worried about it. I'm not seen the glory of 1960 students all over the South started sitting in my town. I knew that if they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream. Taking the whole nation back to those street roads of democracy, which were guaranteed by the founding fathers, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. We got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter what we know, because I've been to mountain top. I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. Black people in Birmingham, Alabama.
Animals and technology and small children, right? Oftentimes don't do what you need them to do. Well, we'll come back to it.
Black people in Birmingham, Trying to tell America about a dream that I had. We got some difficult days ahead, but it really matter with me now, because I've been to mountain top, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we are the people who will get to the promised land. We got some difficult days ahead, but it really matter with me now, because I've been to mountain top, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we are the people who will get to the promised land. I'm not anything, I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Does anyone know what speech this comes out of? Okay, so here's something that I want you to think about. How many of you would say that you are an advocate for justice and freedom? That you're an advocate for justice and freedom, right? And this is by your own measure, not by anybody else's measure, your own measure, right? We're in a really interesting time right now in the United States because we have folks in power that some might say are not for justice and freedom. And others would say they are for justice and freedom. Our problem typically is we don't know what justice and freedom really means and what it means to be an advocate. Because we don't have tools in our toolbox that equip us to be good advocates or to understand what justice and freedom is about. And so, I would ask this question. When you think about all the speeches that Dr. King gave, do you think Dr. King had more than one speech? He probably had more than one speech. And so those of us who are advocates for justice and freedom, and he is supposed to be the hallmark of justice and freedom, wouldn't you think we would know what he said? And so, when you think about all the speeches that Dr. King gave, and you can only come up with the title of one, that might help explain why we are in the situation we are today. So I'd encourage you to learn more about our heralds of justice and freedom. And so this actually came out of a speech called the Mountaintop Speech. And kids always get it because it's in the hook, it's the beat, it's the recurring theme in the song. So they're like, yeah, that's what it is, right? What were some of the things that you heard Dr. King express in this particular presentation? What themes came up? Inclusion came up. What other themes came up? That there are dark days ahead. That he fears no man. That there's hope. That there's justice. That people are starting to stand up for themselves. Now, the thing I think is most intriguing about this particular speech is not only its title and its presentation and its demonstration, because he is an excellent orator, but he says something that's very peculiar once you understand the context of this demonstration, this speech. Dr. King gave this speech in Memphis, Tennessee. He wasn't supposed to give the speech. It wasn't on his docket. It wasn't a part of the civil rights movement plan. But there was a cry in Memphis, Tennessee for someone to come and help. And so Dr. King answered that cry and he went down to help. And it's funny because there are lots of cursory stories about his journey down there and what happened down there. And this is one of my favorite stories. And I can't corroborate the story, but I just think about this as a husband and wife might talk to each other. And that Dr. King went down there. He was sick with flu. He was just getting over a major march. He goes into Memphis, and he's not feeling his best. So he calls his wife. And he had a tradition that whenever he went on these marches, he would send his wife fresh flowers. Because she's a good Southern belle, she accepted those fresh flowers, and she looked forward to those fresh flowers. But on this particular time, he sent her plastic flowers. And when you're used to getting fresh flowers and you get plastic flowers, you might have an attitude. And she did. And so on his call back home, she was wondering, Martin, what's going on with these plastic flowers? He said, Coretta, I don't feel good about this one. There's something different about this particular outing, and I don't feel good about it. Now, Coretta Scott was a wonderful wife. And so being a wonderful wife, when she hears her husband who's out doing this courageous and impactful work, what does she do for him? She hears his doubting in his voice, that he's unsettled. So what does she do for him as a good wife? She supports him. She builds him up. She says, honey, you can do this. You've done it 1,000 times. This is nothing. It's just a little speech. You'll be fine. You'll knock it out the park. She builds him up. And so now he's feeling a little better. And so now she can get back to her question. She says, Martin, so what's going on with these plastic flowers? And he says, Coretta, I wanted to have something that you could remember me by. The irony or the propheticness of his speech is that this is his last speech. And he says to the people, I might not make it, but we will. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Now, the interesting thing about this particular speech is he also makes some religious, he uses a religious metaphor to deliver his message. And why would a reverend use religious metaphors to deliver his message? Because he's on message. And so Dr. King says, I've been to the mountaintop. I have vision. I can see beyond. And we're going to get there. Oftentimes, when we talk with our fathers, we don't ask them what their vision is for their family. Where do you see your family going? Part of what I see in schools is that parents oftentimes acquiesce their power, their influence to the teachers because they think the teachers know better. The teachers don't know better than I do about what's supposed to be for my family. And so typically, fathers don't get asked, what is your vision for your family? Because I tell you, they can come up with some very specific things about what they want for their family. But typically, we don't get asked. We get told what should be the expectations of our family. But Dr. King had a vision. He said, I see the promised land, and I might not make it, but we will. So what was he talking about? We will make it. He won't make it, but we will. I fast forward in my own life. So I'm going to share some stories with you, and I don't expect you to run my marathon. So I don't expect you to do what I do, because we have different callings, we operate in different spheres of influence, but I want you to take the principle and apply it in your circle, your sphere of influence. So I'm at the dollar store, and I love the dollar store. The dollar store makes me feel good about myself. Why? I can afford everything in the dollar store. When I go to Macy's, I need a therapy session. Right? I feel like, oh, dude. Right? Yeah, buyer's remorse, right? So I'm at the dollar store, and there's a couple there with a small child, and the child is in one of those fold-up strollers that I've come to understand is called an umbrella stroller, right? Because it folds up like an umbrella. I didn't know. And so I'm in the dollar store, and the man is standing there, the woman is standing there, and they have the baby, and the woman has a basket, and she pulls out an apple juice and puts it on the counter. And while she does that, the man's eye is caught by something shiny. So he's looking at something shiny, and the woman pulls out her EBT card. Is anyone familiar with an EBT card, electronic benefits card, transfer card, SNAP card, right? So she's in mid-swipe. The dude turns around to her and he says, "You stupid, boop, how the boop are you using our EBT card when I got money right here, you stupid, boop," right? So he's cussing this lady out. And I'm standing right behind him. And the store is full of people. And guess what we all say simultaneously? How much is this thing at the dollar store? How much? Let's check the price on this. Because we're also saying what to the situation? It's none of my business. It's none of my business. Dr. King said, we will make it. We will make it. So I'm standing here, and I'm just like everybody else, but the still small voice says to me, say something. What? And all these people up in here, you want me to say something to this dude who's going off on his lady? Say something. So I made a deal with the voice. I said, okay, voice, I will say something once I'm done with my purchase. So I'm taking my time, and the cashier is like, will you come on? So I'm swiping real slow. I'm trying to, right? So they're still out in the parking lot, and so I said, okay, voice, I said I would do it, so I'll do it. So I end up following them into a grocery store. Now, I'm not stalking them, but, I'm trying to give them some space and whatnot. And I have enough sense not to just tap a stranger on the shoulder and say, stranger, I want to talk to you, right? So I go around an aisle, I meet them face to face, and so now I need some private public space, just in case he needs some help. Because I can handle myself. Because if you fight like that, people won't hit you. They'll just laugh at you, right? So I'm standing there, and I see the brother, and so I say, sir, can I talk to you for a second? Can you step over here? Now, this is the first time I've ever done something like this, right? And so I'm standing there, and I'm unsure of what to say, because one of my greatest fears is that if I say the wrong thing, what? She's going to catch it. Now, I'm okay. I'm fine. I can take care of myself. But if I say the wrong thing, she's going to catch hell. So I'm like, please let me say the right thing. So I'm standing there, and I say, sir, can I talk to you? And he puffs up even bigger. What? And I'm like, I took my ears down, I put my tail between my legs, I'm showing I'm non-threatening. I'm like, no, sir, I just want to talk to you for a second. Can you step over here? So I asked him to take a step to the left, so that gives the mom and the baby the social cue to give us some space, right? So now I'm here with this dude, and we're mano y mano. We're looking eye to eye, and I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. So I'm standing there, and he's like, so what's up? And I said, just want to talk to you. Now, I'm trying to stall in these little milliseconds that I have because I got nothing. And then the voice says, I got you. Open your mouth. So I'm like, yes. Because I trust this voice. I know this voice. I've heard it before. It's guided me. It's never led me wrong. Right now, I'm a little unsure what I'm doing, but the voice says, open your mouth. So I open my mouth, and this is what comes out. Sir, can I share something that I've learned about women? If you want her to grow, you have to water her and give her sunshine. I'm like, what? I hear what I'm saying, but I repeat it, not for him, but for me, because I'm like, what is this? And I say, sir, do you understand? And he looks at me. Yeah, I do. Great. Have a great day, sir. I'll see you later. I did what I was supposed to do. I'm off on my way, right? Dr. King said, we will make it. Who are Dr. King's hands? Who's his voice? Who's Mother Teresa's hands? Who's Mother Teresa's voice? Who's Gandhi's voice? Who's Gandhi's hands? Who is Nelson Mandela's hands? Who's Harriet Tubman's hands? We are. What happened for that young man? You know what, I can't really say if it changed everything about his life, if it changed how he thinks about things, and it doesn't even matter. Because one of the things that we have to recognize is that oftentimes we think that we're working with the person that's in front of us. Particularly those of us who are in social work or do social work type activities, we think that the person in front of us is the person that we're actually helping. And it wasn't until some contemplation and some meditation that I found out why I was compelled to speak. And I was compelled to speak because of the baby. There needed to be some disruption in that family system that demonstrated for that child that there are people who are watching, there are people who care, there are people who see you, even when you don't see them seeing you. Dr. King said, we'll make it. But it's going to be on who to do it. It's going to be on us to do it. And so by standing up and lovingly confronting this man, and I'm not asking you to do what I do. That's my marathon. You start running your couch to 5K. People know what that is? That's to prepare for the marathon. Couch to 5K. Because I'm sure there are some things that you've done that I can't do in your sphere of influence. People ask, well, we've had this election and the country seems to be divided, and where did this come from and why is it this way? And I want to say very simply, it's not changed at all. It's always been this way. Except now people are actually having real conversations about real stuff. It was funny, and I don't mean to make this like a race thing or whatnot, but some of my white friends are really surprised. They were like, racism still exists like this. And I'm like, no freaking duh! No duh! But now it's our time to have conversations about real stuff. We can't afford not to have conversations about real stuff. I don't know if anybody saw the Super Bowl. Anybody watch the Super Bowl? I didn't get a chance to see it, but I heard it was a wonderful thing, so I'm going to watch it, when I get a chance. But there was this ad that came through about building a wall. Did anyone see that particular thing? Now here's the interesting thing. Now, and please write this down, because I didn't put this in your notes, but I want you to write this down somewhere on your notes in your handout or something. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We see things not as they are, but as we are. So the Super Bowl ad showed this mother and child making a journey from somewhere in Central America through Mexico, and they come up on the wall. And so now they're disappointed at the wall. And so now they're walking along the wall, and the wall has these giant doors. And so the woman pushes through the doors and she enters the United States. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Now, the company got a lot of flack for this particular commercial. Has anyone seen any of that information about that commercial? So the company got a lot of flack because people were saying that it was a slap in the face to our immigration policies, that we need to have a wall and there shouldn't be this door in the wall. Other people were saying that it's interesting that they built a wall with a door, right? So there's all this conversation about this stuff. And so finally the company spoke about the commercial that they made for the Super Bowl. And one of the things that they said, and again, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And what the company said was, all we did was dramatize what the president had envisioned, which was a wall with a door in it. Now, what that wall means for us and what that door means for us is very different depending on what we bring to the situation. We don't see it as it is, we see things as we are. And so whatever we're bringing to these conversations determines what we get out of those conversations. And so when we talk about this idea of fatherhood, I want to tell you that, so my daughter is sick right now. And when she gets sick, she gets fussy. And her biggest thing is she feels frustrated because she can't breathe through her nose. And she hasn't figured out the difference between breathing through your nose and breathing through your mouth, right? So if she just breathed through her mouth, it'd be no problem, but she's still breathing through her nose because she's a baby and she's trying to figure this stuff out. So she kicks and she punches, right? I can't tell you, I don't like being kicked and punched. But her kicks and punches mean something different than the ones I would take from someplace else. Why is that? Because I'm a father. I'm a dad. It's what we do. She screams and she says, "Dad, don't go to work, don't go to work." I'm not listening to that foolishness. I'm going to work. Why? Because I'm a dad. Because I'm a dad. I'm a father. So if you open up your handout, there's a poem that I like, and I will tell you that this person in the head. Do you have one? So let me get you. Does everybody have a handout? I want to make sure. Grab some up here. Okay. Cool. Thanks. All right. Good. There's a gentleman right in the back of the head. So Rupert Kipling. Now, one of the things I want to tell you about Rupert Kipling is that he was a racist. He was a xenophobe. He was also a great poet laureate, right? And so he wrote this poem, "If," and it has become one of those things that I repeats myself, particularly when things get difficult and get hard. And I will also tell you that in my faith community, it is our belief that the Creator will use mules to get messages across, right? So it's not always the most talented or gifted person that can get a message across. But I think Rupert is being used to get a message across in this particular poem. So if you can keep your head when all those about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their own doubling too. Sorry, doubting, I don't have my glasses. Thank you. If you can wait and not be tired of waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give in to the hating. And yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, he understands. Oh, this is wonderful. Look at this. And treat if you can meet triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knives to make the trap for fools, or watch the things that you gave your life to broken, stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it all to turn a pitch and toss, and to lose and start again for your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve to ensue, to serve your turning long after they're gone, and so hold when there's nothing in you except the will which says, "I'll hold on." If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither foe nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men can count on you, but none too much. If you can fill your unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of a distance run. Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. If, by Rupert Kemper. Thank you so much. So as fathers, as men, as we work with folks, this is the counterbalance that we oftentimes have to struggle with. And we typically don't have conversations about this balance of what it actually means to be a man. So let's skip on to number 3. So number 3, there are 5 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I'd like for you to do is I want you to write the name of a person who has taught you about fatherhood or manhood. So all of us have had folks who have taught us about fatherhood or manhood. I want you to put their name in one of those smaller circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there'll be 5 names that has taught you something about fatherhood or manhood. So all 5. Yep, so one name in each circle, all 5. And once you have that name of that individual, I want you to put one thing that they taught you, or what was the attribute that they demonstrated about that concept of manhood or fatherhood. So what was the attribute that they taught you about manhood or fatherhood? It can just be a word. It doesn't have to be a full sentence or anything like that. It's just a word. All right, it looks like most people have written at least 4 or 5. Let's see about some pins down. So what I'd like for you to do now is a simple game. I want you to play a game with me. I want you to go around the room and find as many people as you can who were taught a similar lesson out of those 5 lessons to what you were taught. Right? So I want you to share what was taught to you by those people. And if you find someone who has something that was commonly taught to them or similar to what you were taught, I want them to put a signature next to that circle. All right? I want them to put their signature next to that circle. Right? So if it was something that was similarly taught or the same, I want them to put a signature next to the circle where it was similar or the same. All right? You have, and I'd like for you to do, if you can get a minimum of 2 people for each one. A minimum of 2 people for each one. You have 90 seconds to do that, starting now. 60 seconds. Seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and game over.
Gotcha. Well, I'm not interrupting. All right. Come on, Koen. All right, thank you.
No problem. Cool. So as you were going around the room and you were looking at other people's papers, were there some values or concepts that you were like, you know what? I was taught something very similar. So where were the first places that you were able to kind of find those connections? What were those concepts where you were able to find connection? Yes, sir. Love. So you had people who demonstrated love to you. Cool. Yes. Wisdom. You had folks who demonstrated wisdom. Yes. Hard work. You had folks who demonstrated hard work. Yes, ma'am. Spiritual leader of the house. All right. Yes. Faith. This idea of faith. There was another hand over here somewhere. Just love. All right. Great. Yes. Loyalty or steadfastness. All right. What? You had a woman that taught you love, right? Yeah. What were there some that were more difficult to find people to sign on? That it took a little while to find someone to sign on, or it's something that wasn't. Yes, ma'am. So equality with the mother, right? So if the concept of equality was something that was taught in your household or where you grew up, or was something that was valued, please raise your hand, even if it wasn't written on your paper. This idea of equality. All right, cool. What was another one that was somewhat difficult to find someone to sign on, or you didn't? Kindness. If kindness was taught in your home by someone, please raise your hand. All right, cool. Now, I have an interesting question, because it's obvious that people were able to find those connections. So did those people have a curriculum by which they passed out a syllabus? There was a pre and post exam, maybe a midterm exam on teaching those values. Is that how those things were taught? No, how were they taught? Yes, sir. So you memorize poems and speeches, right? All right, cool. It was in the schools as well. Okay, cool. Yes. Music. It came from artists. So the artists that your father listened to, or people around you listened to. So how'd you come to music? Just on your own? Oh, what the lyrics meant. All right, cool. Yeah, yes. Through modeling, right? So my grandfather was one of the greatest men in my life, and we never sat down and talked about all of this stuff, but he taught me tons of things just by having me be around him, right? And so it was important that, and it was funny, I didn't recognize this, but my grandfather made us go to the bowling alley on Saturdays to learn how to bowl. And it messed me up, because that was the only day you could see cartoons, was on Saturday mornings. Right? Not like today you can see them anytime you want. But it was Saturday mornings, and Super Friends was important to see. And my grandfather was interrupting my cartoon watching by having us go bowling. It wasn't until after he passed that I realized that he owned the bowling alley where we worked. I was wondering why we got free cheeseburgers. I was wondering why all this stuff was a la carte to us. That we could just pick these things and it would be so, but it was because we had a relationship with him. And what he was actually trying to teach us was things about his life. Has anyone spent time with an elderly person who's making a transition to death? Right? Yeah. It is very interesting to me. So my grandfather had prostate cancer, which was just absolutely amazing that he died of prostate cancer when he smoked 4 packs of Cools a day. How do you prostate cancer, but you smoke 4 packs of Cools a day, right? And there's just something special and unique about the smell of Cools and a Ford LTD. It's just the combination of the two just brings me back, right? And so he was dying of prostate cancer, and as I would go to visit him. I was a sophomore in college as this thing was happening, so I didn't get to see him every day. But when I would come home, I would come sit with my grandfather, and it was really interesting. It was at a time when I was militant. I was in college, and I was a militant black man. Did not like white people. If you don't know, that's not going to get you very far. Anyway, but I was militant, and so I didn't eat pork. All this stuff. And so my granddad invited me over, or I went to go visit my grandfather, and he said, "Do you want some lunch?" And I had already eaten, but I said, "Yes." And so my grandfather goes and he pulls out a big old piece of ham. And he slices off the butt of the ham, which is the saltiest part of the ham. And he says, this is going to be our lunch. Is this okay? What do I say to my grandfather that just made me lunch with stuff I don't eat? And he asked me if it's okay. What do I say? I say, yes, sir, it's fine. Right? So I eat this ham, and every time I visited him, he kept repeating his stories. And early in our encounters, I started interrupting him, and I would say, Granddad, you already told me that story. And then he would apologize. He said, I'm sorry, but it was a good story, wasn't it? I said, yes, sir, it was a good story. And then the next time I would visit him, he'd tell those same 5 stories, and he kept looping those 5 stories. And then something told me, listen to his stories. So I listened to the stories. And I got the clarity that these were the 5 defining stories of his life. Everything that he wanted me to know about his life was trapped in these 5 stories, and he kept repeating it until I got it. And I'm glad that I got it. I got the lesson. I got what he was trying to tell me, even though he didn't know that's what he was trying to tell me. Those are the 5 defining stories of his life. Why do you think that your parents or the people around you, your guardians, who taught you about fatherhood and manhood, why were you able to find connections with people who may not have known your parents? How is that possible? I assume people found the connections, right? There are lots of people talking and signing. How is that possible? How were you able to make those connections? Because you're communicating. In a lot of ways, we want similar things. We want the same things. But how we get those things may be very different. The values that we have are very common, right? If you flip back to just to number 2, what you'll see is that there are 3 goals of human interaction. People are looking for significance, they're looking for belonging, and they're looking for safety. Significance says that I'm a person with purpose and power. That I'm in relationships with people who understand my purpose and power. And that I'm safe to be in relationships with people who understand my purpose and power. All too often, what we've done with fathers is that we're demasculating them. We're taking away their purpose and their power. We're taking away their purpose and power. And how are we doing that? By telling them things as opposed to asking them things. One of the things that, I help facilitate a group called FRED, which is with Anoka County, Washington County Head Start. And one of the things that we do with the dads is we teach them how to reach their children. And this is the funny thing. Some of our fathers can't read. So how do you teach a father to read to his children if he can't read? You empower him and say, look, you may not be able to read, but your child doesn't know that. You at least, and the great thing about being a parent is you only have to stay one step ahead of your child. And so we tell the parents, here's a book, point out the tree. Ask them what the color of the tree is. Ask them what color the sky is. Ask them how many animals are there. We use books not just for reading, but we point out all the other ways that you can read with your child. Because it's not about the reading. The father sitting with the child, what is that about? It's about spending the time. It's about modeling. It's about teaching them how to be a human being through your actions. You don't have to be the brightest bulb. You don't have to have a syllabus. You don't have to have all of these things, but you have to be human with your child, with your young people. And there are lots of fallacies about fatherhood, about fathers being deadbeat dads, and I would say that the majority of fathers are not deadbeat dads. They've been dads that have been beat up. We talked in one of our FRED meetings about this idea of if you want a good relationship with your child, whether you're in the home or outside of the home, you must have a good relationship with the mama. You can have whatever opinions you want about her, but in front of her and in front of that child, you have to have a good relationship. Otherwise, every interaction that you have will be undermined outside of that home. Outside of your presence. Right? And so that's where a lot of this kind of deadbeat dad stuff comes from. And we also have to recognize that human relationships are very complicated. Very complicated. And so to try to boil them down to, he's good and she's bad, or she's bad and he's good, it's not that complicated, because human beings are dynamic creatures. So let's go back to your to number 3. And there's a larger circle there. And in that larger circle, let's call that the pie of all human knowledge. Okay, it's a little melodramatic, right? But let's say that this is the pie of all there is to know about fatherhood. What I want you to cut yourself is a piece of pie of what you know of everything there is to know about fatherhood. Whether you're a father or not, you know something about fatherhood. So I want you to cut yourself a piece of pie of what you know about fatherhood, of all that there is to know. So what are some examples of things that you know about fatherhood? Yes.
Be there.
Be there, that it's important to be present. What else do you know about fatherhood? That you have to listen. What else do you know about fatherhood? That you have to have rules, guidelines, right? Yes. That you're able to express feelings, masculine and feminine, right? That this idea of fatherhood or manhood outside of gender roles is on a spectrum, right? There's a second piece of pie that I want you to cut right now, is what you know that you don't know about fatherhood. There is a third piece, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But the second piece is the size of what you know that you don't know about manhood. And what are some examples of things that you don't know about manhood?
Maybe the pressure that a father carries.
Maybe the pressure that a father carries. One thing that I know that I don't know is how does fatherhood look differently in a Hmong community than it does in a Somali community, or how it looks different in the African American community, because it certainly does look different, even though the functions oftentimes are the same. And the last part of that circle, and I want you to write this word in there, is your blind spot. That third part of the circle, whatever size it is, I would imagine that it's probably larger than those first two, is your blind spot. And that whole thing is your paradigm. And your paradigm is what gets passed down and passed down and passed down. So those circles of those people that are around that paradigm, they were the folks who were influencing your paradigm. And where did they get their paradigm of fatherhood? From their parents, from their ancestors. And has anyone ever received a copy of a copy of a copy? Or played the telephone game, right? Once it goes through all those iterations, is the original the same as what we typically receive? And I would suggest that it is not. And so we have to recognize that all those things are contextual. I'm going to talk just a little bit about how to bulletproof yourself as a man. If you open up your handout, letter A talks about this idea of being boxed in. And there are very artificial ways in which we talk about fatherhood and manhood. And there's this thing called the man box, and it is all the impossible ways that men are supposed to be men. What are some examples of some of the impossible ways that men are supposed to be men? What it really means to be a real man. Like men don't cry. That they're emotionless. That they're the rock of the family. That there's the strength, that they're the blah, blah, blah. And we know that all of those things are impossible for one person to be all of them. Right? We can be some of them, but but it's impossible. So how do we end up bulletproofing this idea of a man? And here's the problem with this impossible man box that oftentimes we get pushed in, is that there is a sense of resentment when I can't do it. when I can't do it all. And I'm not going to seek out help to get it because that means to be less than a man. So, if I'm lost and I don't have Siri talking, giving me directions, I'm not asking for direction because that makes me seem like less than a man. Until we get real lost, and then I got to hear her talk about why didn't I ask for directions, and then that doesn't help anything at all, right? So let's go down to, and Han is the result of that resentment, right? Han, this idea of Han. And you can read that Korean word for yourself, but it's a sense of resentment. So how do you bulletproof a man? So if you go down to letter B, there's a shape with 4 corners, and this is how you bulletproof a man, or you help a man bulletproof himself. And if you can put a number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that star somewhere, however you want to configure that, and I'll give you these 4 points, and then our time, for the most part, will be done. The first point is that a man has to be helping another man. Point 1. So a man has to be in the service or helping another man. Point 2. A man has to have a man that's on his level to communicate with. Point 3. A man has to have a man he's reaching up towards. And point 4. He has to be in a community that is building him up. You want to bulletproof a man, and when I say bullets, what I mean is that there are all of these attacks that are coming on fathers, on families, financial, emotional, relational, spiritual. There's all these assaults, and if you want to bulletproof them, you put those 4 factors in a person's life. And they'll get over their steeplechase. And one of the things that, if you look at letter D, this idea of a steeplechase. Steeplechase is that race that you run, you have to jump over these obstacles, right? You have those 4 people in your life, those 4 systems in your life, and you can overcome anything. Because you get the wisdom from people who've done it before. You get the cathartic feeling from people who are on your level. And when you're helping somebody else, that always reminds you that things, A, could be worse, but you can also be impactful in somebody's life. And when you have environments that are constantly building you up, you recognize that this is a human journey, not just about me. The other thing is that letter F, we have to get people into cognitive control, that they have to be mindful of how they feel, their feelings, and what it means to be a parent. Certain kinds of sacrifices we make as parents, as fathers, as men. And that manhood, again, is on a spectrum. This idea of masculine and feminine is on a spectrum. If we go to letter C, there are some mental models that we have to deconstruct. Some of those are like reverse racism. Doesn't exist. Anytime we allow that kind of conversation to happen, we end up with some false narratives, right? So discrimination is discrimination, but people oftentimes feel as those things are real. That we have to look at blame versus responsibility. As a man, I'm taking responsibility for everything that happens in my household. Everything. There's a mouse in the house. I got to take responsibility for making sure that mouse gets out the house, right? I don't blame the weather. I don't blame anything. I take responsibility for that, and I become actionable in it. Because there are all these false narratives. On that left side of C, you'll see there's a conversation about, are there more black men in jail or in college? And to be quite honest, there are more black men in college than there are in jail, but that's not the narrative that folks want to share. They want to share that there is a such thing as black on black crime. There is no such thing as black on black crime. Those are all crimes of proximity. Do farm communities have more crime than urban communities? No. Why? There are fewer people in those rural communities than there are in urban communities, right? And so when you have more people in the same amount of space, you have more activity of all kinds in those spaces. But we don't call crime between white people white on white crime, because that doesn't fit a narrative that we're trying to create, right? So there's that. And then also looking at our our behaviors, our thoughts, and our emotions are connected. In CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, we really talk about this relationship between our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. So if I have bigoted thoughts, if I have bigoted emotions, if I have prejudicial thoughts, then what's the outcome of my behavior? It is going to be discrimination. Right? If I have loving thoughts, if I have loving thoughts and I have allophilia, this idea of having positive regard for other human beings, what then will be the result of my behavior? I have more positive behaviors. And so when we talk about that, we get to this point where we can understand this idea of liberation. And liberation simply is recognizing that the problems that we have, typically we don't identify as the problem. When does liberation happen in this set of pictures? Is it at the beginning of the pictures, or is it at letter F? And what is the difference between all of those pictures and that picture letter F? So right inside it, the box called G, what's the difference between that first set of pictures and that last picture in the lower right-hand corner? Which of those demonstrates this idea of liberation? Yeah. There's no table, right? There's no table. And all too often, we keep identifying, we keep working around problems as opposed to actually getting rid of the problem. And so when we talk about this idea of being a father and fatherhood, we have to be honest and identify that sometimes I can be the problem myself. Yes, sir. And sometimes when you table something, it means you don't deal with it, right? Like a parking lot or you set aside something. Right? The greatest gift that was ever given to me was this concept, and it's on the back of your handout. That as a father, my job is to give and to get this phrase. That there's dignity and honor in being human. And so when I work with our fathers in our program, one of the things that I'm constantly trying to give them is give them dignity for wherever they are. For wherever they are. There's some men who've just gotten out of prison, and they ask me, well, I don't know how to do this, or how do I access this or that or the other thing. I don't stand on a chair and say, well, if you had made better decisions, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. No, he asked me for help, and my job is to give him the help that he wants, or to point him in the direction of resources. And as professionals, I think I mentioned this before, sometimes we think that we're there, that the trainings we've gone to, the education that we have is to actually benefit us, and it's not. It's to benefit the people that we serve. Can you imagine, metaphorically, apple trees gloating about how many apples they have, how much fruit they have? And can you imagine that same said fruit from an orange tree being squeezed and fed back to the orange tree? What ultimately would happen to that orange tree if it ate its own fruit? What would happen? It would die. Why? Because the fruit is not for the orange tree, it's for other people. When I spoke up in that family's life, and I confronted that young man to help him think about his world differently and his relationships and his family differently, I was trying to share my fruit. Trying to share my fruit. And so when men in our Fred program come to me and say, can you help me with this, or do you know about this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no. Everything that I know has not been for me. It's been for you. And I've just been waiting for you to come pick the fruit from this tree. So here you go. And so this idea of dignity and honor and being human. Honor is the highest form of respect we can give someone. The highest form of respect. When we talk about this idea of being, please raise your hand if you either purchased a ticket or you passed a test that made you eligible to be born. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here. We're just responding to an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's disgusting, but we all accepted an invitation to try to figure out what it means to be human. And human has two terms. If you look this up in the dictionary, you'll find two definitions. One is a noun, being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. Human. Human also is an adjective. And what does that adjective do? What do adjectives do? They describe the noun. And how do we want to be described as human beings? I believe it goes right back to those 5 circles that you drew earlier. That we want to be seen as loving, compassionate, impactful, powerful, responsible. And so when I meet with my families, I'm constantly trying to give them dignity and honor of being human, because I know that will help them to get their safety, significance, and belonging. And when you help someone get their safety, significance, and belonging, you've helped them change their own life. My name is Andre Koen. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Do we have time for a couple of questions, comments? It's 10 after. All right, any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody heard what he said. He said in Somali culture, it's the mothers who teach the boys not to cry and to be strong and those kinds of things. Suck it up.
How does a man respond to that?
Okay. So he said, so you're also talking about deserts, right? That's what you just said, and that you have to be tough in those situations, right? Now, here's something that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but context is everything. Context is everything. Has anyone seen that film Fences? Anyone seen that? If you haven't seen it, go see it for a number of reasons. But one of the most compelling parts of that film is that there's a father and a son conversation, and the son goes up to the dad. He says, "Dad, why don't you like me?" And the father says, "What?" The son says, "Why don't you like me?" And the father says, "Son, I don't have to like you." Now, many of us would hear that and say, "Well, that's very harsh." Very harsh, particularly if we've all received ribbons on the soccer team. No, he said, "I don't have to like you. All I have to do is provide food for you, shelter, clothes on your back. Those are the things that I have to do, but I don't have to like you." And then it goes on to say, "Son, if you're looking for people to like you, you'll always be lost. Because there will always be people who don't like you." And so what it means to man is, no, you don't care if people like you. You had your hand up, sir. I want to recognize that. Oh, okay. So context. So he was coming out of a context that said, in the early part of 1920s, 1910, there wasn't a whole lot of people who liked. this black father. If you can read between the lines. And so he had to raise his child up in a particular kind of context, given what the demands were. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So these roles keep changing as context changes, right? And so old world versus kind of new world, or as time changes, these things also have to change. And when they don't change, when we don't adapt to them, we get in a lot of trouble, right? So I think about Mr. Adrian Peterson. He got in a lot of trouble because he didn't realize that context had changed. And why did Mr. Adrian Peterson get in trouble? Why did he have to take a year off of his job? Because he spanked his child, right? Now, Mr. Adrian Peterson is very articulate, very well-spoken man. And they asked him, they said, "Sir, why did you spank your child that way?" And what was his response? Because that's what happened to him. He took a paradigm that he was given and implemented that paradigm without the recognition that what? Context has changed. We don't discipline our children like that anymore. So I'm the daddy when my wife said, wait till your daddy get home. That's me. She's talking about me. So when I get home, I'm bringing the thunder, the lightning, the discipline into my household. And I come into that household and I hear what happens. And I gather all my powers and I say to that young 2-year-old child, "Young lady, you sit in timeout for 2 minutes. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Okay, come here." No, we discipline our children different, right? Back in the old days, I don't even want to cause you any vicarious trauma by trying to tell you how discipline was enacted on me. But we found some different and hopefully more effective ways to deal with raising our children. It's because the context has changed. And so part of the problem, or part of the solution, is to helping our fathers recognize that context has changed, and they have to change some of their behaviors and their tactics with that changing context. Any other questions, comments, observations? Yes, ma'am.
What's your advice when the being taken on the money is not going? What do you tell your father when you're going to do, all that?
So this is what I remind them, because typically there's a reason why they're not together, and it's both of them. Something happened between the both of them. I tell this story. I was working with a gentleman, and he and his woman had been together for 10 years. And he had been acting a fool for 10 years. Just acting a fool, not doing what he's supposed to do, not following through on his word. She can't count on him. He's unpredictable, all this kind of stuff. And he says, Andre, she won't listen to me, and I've changed. And I said, that's good that you've changed. I said, but I want you to remember, you have 10 years to get back to 0. Now, if in year 11, after you've changed, she's not listening to you, then we got a problem. So whatever that change in behavior is that the man has, I ask him, how vested are you in this? Because you were acting up for a while, so to get to 0, you gotta keep acting right just to get to 0. And then after you've gotten past that point, then you can start to look for some change. And so I keep telling them that no matter what she does, you have to be in control, and you have to be mindful of what your goal is. If your goal is to have a good relationship with your kids, let her say what she's going to say. Let her act. As long as it's not physical harm or financial shanking, as a friend of mine uses. Let her have that. You keep meeting her where you can meet her. And someone will say, well, that's being a doormat. Well, I'd rather be a doormat letting people in than not having any access at all. And so I can't control what she does. Yes, she is whatever you say she is, blank, 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 whatever that is. But you chose to lay down with her. You chose to be connected to her in this kind of way. So you must have saw something that you wanted to be connected with. And so now you have to let that ride. And so you can't change her, you just keep changing you. And you be consistent. If there was another hand, and I think we have to go. All right, good. Thank you so much. Have a great